Hi, this is LilaJaber. Thank you for joining us for this week's conversation with a Florida leader.
I am running for House District 9. My name on the ballot will be Allison Tant for State House District 9. That is the heart of Tallahassee.
Yeah. So, Allison, you're already so well known among the political circles. You've served as chair of the Democrat Party. Were there lessons learned there
yes, for sure.
and things that have prepared you for your House run now?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the biggest lesson is don't take anything for granted, and also to make sure that nothing is left undone. I mean, I'm very focused on, again, that's what I mentioned, like I need to be accessible and to listen to every point of view, and everybody matters and everybody's valuable. You know, one of the things beyond, and I probably wouldn't have run for this seat, by the way, if I had not been asked to run for and then take on a term for party chair, because that was brutal work. It was some of the hardest work in politics ever. And
how long was that term?
It was a 4-year term,
Yeah.
and I served all 4 years from the first day to the last day, and it was really hard work. But I'd also worked on that with so many people in Tallahassee for various people who'd run for office here. So I've been doing a lot of work within the community for a long time, inside of politics and outside of politics.
So, you know, as Democrat Party chair and with your reputation, very positive reputation that you're a hard worker and tenacious, and when Allison puts her mind to something, it gets done.
Thank you.
How do you intend to walk across the political aisles and really get some bipartisan proposals through the legislature?
Most of the things that I care about are completely nonpartisan. I mean, when it comes to disabled children, when it comes to our senior citizens, when it comes to making sure that we can put the pieces together after a disaster, nobody cares if you're a Democrat or Republican. You know, you and I were talking before this. I have several things that I do in the disability community for families. It's never an issue, or just like when you go to a doctor's office, are you a Republican or a Democrat? If there's a human being that needs help, I'm going to help that human being, and it doesn't matter where they come from, who their moms and dads are, what color skin somebody has, what if they're rich or poor, if they are Republican or Democrat, and if they're from here or not from here. If there's somebody I can help, I'm going to do it, and I think that is what we hopefully want in everybody who's running for office. And I think that when it comes to so many of the issues that strike at the heart of humanity, I think there's a lot of common ground. Most of us are right there.
Absolutely. Where does that passion for special needs and underserved come from? What's your you have a personal story, so for folks that are not familiar with you.
All right. Well, so I'm going to start before my own direct impact, but my mom and dad. I start with my mom and dad. My mother was one of 8 children, born before the Depression, and lived through her early years in the Depression, born in abject poverty. My grandmother had one dress that she took off to wash and have to put it back on when it dried. And my mom was one of 8 that they all, to help feed the family, went and picked beans and berries and tobacco in the fields of North Carolina to help feed each other. She grew up hungry, and so I'm driven by just that issue. And so there's a hungry, hurting person. I feel compelled to step in. My mom and dad were definitely products of the greatest generation, but also the hardest hit. My dad grew up in an orphanage. He was placed in an orphanage when he was 8 years old. My grandmother could not feed or take care of him. My grandfather, his father, had abandoned the family, and so he grew up in the orphanage until he was 18 and graduated. The orphanage, went into the Merchant Marines, and started to then support his mother, who had placed him in the orphanage because she had no way to take care of him. And so they just instilled in me, like my dad, I can hear it like right now. When you start something, you finish it. And my mother telling me that you set your mind to do what you're going to do, and then you work hard and you go do it. So she told me I was going to go to college. Don't even contemplate marriage or anything else until you finish college. My dad, my mom lost a child, and early in her marriage to toxemia, was in the hospital for a year, And my dad sold Christmas cards to help pay the hospital bills. And my dad, I remember going through a difficult time, and he said to me, fill up your life with so much positive, there's no room for negative. And so those are kind of some things that have driven me. So then I get married to my husband, Barry. We, in 1996, we got married in 1998. We had twin boys, one of whom has significant disabilities. He had to have open heart surgery when he was 23 months old, and he also has ongoing challenges. He's got a condition called Williams syndrome, which has impacts to cognition. He went to Leon High School, by the way. Cowboy was his nickname there. And he's been a product of early intervention, which was a program that Ronald Reagan passed in the 80s, and benefited from the inclusion of the IDEA passed by George W. Bush, and the inclusion in our communities with the ADA passage. So he is the product of every good policy that can help someone with disabilities, and it didn't matter who passed it, right? These are all good policies. And so now he's also been a product of ESE from start to finish, from K-12. He's in the transition, actually just recently graduated from the transition program. So he has been my greatest teacher. I have gone and worked on policies, rules, and legislation with members of the legislature, both while I was party chair and before I was party chair, and after I retired from the legislative arena. So this is something that, though my walk of life includes that, my mom lived with me for the last 10 years of her life. I was her caregiver, and I wouldn't trade those years for anything. Some of them were difficult because you see somebody you love become more and more vulnerable. And so that's probably why I'm driven in these areas, because I've lived
so many life lessons to apply to your career in the legislature. And probably those are the assets that help you relate to others in the community.
Right.
Your work related to special needs and poverty took you to one of your personal projects,
Yes.
Independence Landing.
Yes.
Do you want to describe what that is and where you are in that journey?
Sure. So there's two things. So first of all, before Independence Landing, I got together a group of moms called Keys, which created a whole pathway for students with disabilities to continue to have opportunities for growth, personal development, and job training. And so we've raised $400,000 over the course of the program. We've awarded 190 scholarships to students to go on to continuing education opportunities. We've created two programs out. One with TCC, the Equal Connections program, which is a program just for students with cognitive disabilities, and then also a summer institute that teaches independent living skills, job skills, life skills, stuff like that. So I've been doing that work now for 15, 16 years. And then what I learned is that, I was talking with actually Senator Andy Gardner, who also has a child with disabilities, about, what's next. We've always kind of mentored each other. I would tell, his son's slightly younger than mine, so before, when his first son was first diagnosed, we talked about what he was facing educationally that I was working on, and then now he turned me on to this. And so there is a model in Florida that is innovative and cutting edge that utilizes affordable housing funding to build planned communities for people with cognitive and intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities who can live there with a modicum of support. So this is not a medically driven community. This is not for individuals who need 24-hour, 7-day-a-week care, but it is a joyful, wonderful community where people with cognitive and developmental disabilities can live with modicums of supports, things like reminders.
And feel independent.
And be independent, feel independent. They'll continue to have lifelong learning and support. This generation of people with these kinds of disabilities, this is the first generation to routinely outlive their parents because of the things I mentioned. We've had the early intervention program. We've had access to health care that we just really didn't have before. We've had so many advances and, microsurgeries, and things
Right.
like that. My son was 23 months old and he had his open heart surgery with tools and things that didn't exist a
Right.
generation ago. And then we've also got, the Americans with Disabilities Act and inclusion in public and private education with strategies we never thought of a generation ago. So they're able to do more. They're healthier than ever. They're living longer lives than ever. But yet, the only place they can live after the last parent dies is in a nursing home.
Right. So
And
the self-care issues were unaddressed,
Correct.
certainly in this region.
And certainly, and independence and fostering. We just don't have the infrastructure here like they do in other communities to work on that. After a child hits 22 here, everything stops. Unless they're a MedWaiver client, and as you know, you've heard the stories about MedWaivers. The lines are long and long and long forever to get on, off the wait list. So, this is a really exciting development for
I can't
us.
imagine how you feel. I mean, the leadership you've displayed in that area is just really unmatched.
And again, this is an issue that goes beyond partisanship. It goes
Right.
to really
Senator Gardner is what political affiliation?
Republican. He's a Republican, and he actually headlined a fundraiser for my Keys committee one year because this is an issue that when it comes to human beings, it doesn't matter what party you're in. None of that matters, nor should it. And when you're in a disaster, same thing. I set up after Hurricane Michael. I had a hurricane relief center that I helped facilitate and run for 90 days, and it never. I had people of all stripes helping, and then it didn't occur to us to ask, like, what party are you? And I'm trying to get you food and supplies and hygiene items and baby diapers and all that kind of stuff. None of that matters.
You are a wife, a mother, very active in your career. You're running for offices. Part of this interview process for me is because of the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum, and really wanting to inform, inspire, and motivate young women to enter into high-wage jobs, careers that are absolutely sustainable futures. And so my question for you in that regard is, how do you inspire young female leaders? What do you say to them? Obviously, you inspire them just by being you, Allison, but what do you say to them in today's environment?
Well, what I want to say to younger women and girls like your daughter and mine is that you're smart. You are so smart. You don't doubt yourself. Don't let anybody else make you doubt yourself. If you have an idea, pursue it. Don't wait for permission. Obviously work for collaboration. Work to build a team around you of people who will make you better in executing your idea. But don't doubt yourself. And that's one of the things as women that we do every single day.
Yes.
That's what we do. And so one of the things that I try to impress upon every young woman that has something they want to contribute, that your contribution's important, it's valuable. You do add a huge asset to what you want to do. So let's do it, and find a mentor who will help you do it the right way, and help give you wings so that you can do it. Because I think that's one of the things that we all have to do better for this generation coming along, is that we also have to trust them because they're pretty savvy.
They're
pretty
savvy.
Yes, they're pretty sharp. They can communicate oftentimes, in a much more cogent manner than some of us. We tend to be wordy, where they tend to be succinct, and that is exciting to
the
see.
text generation.
Correct. In fact, I had a great conversation with a new friend last night about some of that. So it's really important.
What's the first thing you want to do in the legislature?
First thing I want to do in the legislature is I want to look under some rocks where it comes to some of the. I think as a member of the legislature, and government in particular, has an unusual burden, an extra burden, to be mindful of the expenditure of dollars. Where it comes to some of the programs that are out there, we saw how the domestic violence funding was misspent, misused. I want to make sure that for our disabled people, that those dollars are precious. It's got to be spent correctly. It's got to, I want to make sure that that's happening. Same with our seniors. So that is something I'm going to care about in relation to a non-human issue, but social, also part of that is I'm very interested in resiliency for our state. You know, we know that we've seen, you know, the uptick in storms. Certainly COVID has been another natural disaster, but looking at building up our infrastructure better so that we're more resilient statewide, I think we could do it. And I think that it's just a matter of actually pulling on the resources that are right here to get some of that work done.
Absolutely. Appreciate your optimism.
Please join us for part 2 of the interview with Allison Tant, candidate for House District 9, as we discuss the role of the legislature in the Black Lives Matter movement.